Greetings, friends. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is a segment I'd like to call Jenerous Readings and Discussions. I'm Jen, and this segment is about books that I've read and that I've learned, things that I've learned from them and how I could apply them to my life or what I liked or disliked about them. The purpose of this segment is to create discussions and explore more about the worlds of the things that I personally don't know. In this segment, I will be providing an audio clip of me reading chapters, or a chapter, depending how long they are, and concluding with some discussions with myself about what I've read. Please be kind, as I know I stutter, missay some words, and the like while I'm reading. So, just please be gentle. I am working on my reading skills, and I am proud for being able to complete chapters and being able to record and share with you, the people of the internet. After reading, I will let you know that I am transitioning to video, so for the discussion portion in case you wanted to watch. Again, I appreciate you so much for tuning in, and without further ado, I present you the first book that I would like to read and discuss with you is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. On this episode, I will be reading the beginning, which is the 2020 years, 2020 hindsight, the introduction, as well as chapter 1. The audiobook will now begin. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Written by Robert T. Kiyosaki. Narrated by Jenny Lamb. 20 years, 2020 hindsight. It was 20 years ago today. The Beatles released the Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band album on June 1st, 1976. It was an immediate commercial and critical success, spending 27 weeks at the top of the album's chart in the UK and 15 weeks at number 1 in the United States. Time magazine declared Sgt. Pepper's a historic departure in the music of progress. It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1968, as well as Album of the Year, the first rock album to ever receive that honor. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was released 20 years ago, on my 50th birthday on April 8th, 1997. Like the Beatles story, this book was not an immediate commercial success. It was not a critical success. In fact, the book's release and the firestorm of criticism that followed was quite the opposite. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was originally self-published because every book publisher we approached turned my book down. A few rejection slips offered comments like, "You do not know what you're talking about." I learned from most publishers are more likely my highly educated poor dad than my rich dad. But most publishers disagreed with my rich dad's lessons on money, as did my poor dad. 20 years ago today, in 1997, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a warning, a book of a lesson about the future. 20 years later, millions of people around the world are more aware of my rich dad's warnings and his lessons about the future. With 2020 hindsight, many have said that his lessons were prophetic. Predictions come true. A few of those lessons are: Rich Dad lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. 20 years ago, a few publishers turned my book down. They did not agree with Rich Dad's number 1 lesson. Today, many people are more aware of the growing divide between the rich and everyone else. Between 1993 and 2010, over 50% of the increase in national income in the United States went to the wealthiest 1%. Since then, things have only gotten worse. Economists at the University of California found 95% of the income gains between years 2009 and 2012 went to the wealthiest 1%. The lesson? The increase in income are going to entrepreneurs and investors and not employees, not the people who work for the money. Rich Dad lesson. Savers are losers. 20 years ago, most publishers vehemently disagreed that this lesson from Rich Dad. The poor and middle class save money as a religion, financial salvation from poverty, and protection from the cruel world. Many people call savers losers is taking God name in vain. The lesson: a picture is worth 1,000 words. Take a look at the chart of 120 years of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and you'll see why and how savers become losers. The chart shows there have been 3 massive stock market crashes in the first 10 years of this new country. The chart below illustrates these crashes. The first crash was the dot-com crash around year 2000. The second and third crashes were the real estate crash of 2007, followed by the banking crash of 2008. The giant crash of 1929. When you compare the first 3 crashes of the 21st century to the giant crash of 1929, you gain perspective of how truly giant the first 3 crashes of the century were. The chart below shows after each crash, the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve began printing money, saving the rich. Between years 2000 and 2016, in the name of saving the economy, the banks of the world kept cutting interest and rates and printing money. While our leaders wanted to believe they were saving the world, in reality, the rich were saving themselves and threw the poor and middle class under a bus. Today, interest rates in many countries are below 0, which is why savers are losers. Today, biggest losers are the poor and middle class, the people who work for money and save money. Rich Dad lesson: your house is not an asset. 20 years ago in 1997, every publisher who sent me a rejection slip criticized Rich Dad's lesson that your house is not an asset. 10 years later, in 2007, when subprime borrowers began to default on their subprime mortgages, the world's real estate bubble burst into millions of owners found out the truth and the lesson the hard way. Their house was not an asset. The real problem. Most people do not know that real estate crash was not really a real estate crash. Poor people did not cause the real estate crash. Rich people caused the real estate crash. The rich created financially independent engineered products known as derivatives, products of Warren Buffett has called weapons of mass financial destruction. When financial weapons of mass destruction started to explode, the real estate market crashed. The poor subprime borrowers were blamed. In 2007, there was an estimated $700 trillion in financial derivatives. Today is an estimated there are 1.2 quadrillion in the financial derivatives. In other words, the real problem has gotten bigger, not better. Rich Dad lesson: why the rich pay less in taxes. 20 years ago, few publishers criticized Rich Dad Poor Dad for disclosing how and why rich pay less in taxes. One state that the lesson was illegal. 10 years later, in 2007, Barack Obama was running for re-election against Governor Mitt Romney. When it was disclosed that President Obama paid approximately 30% of his income tax and Governor Romney paid less than 13% in taxes, Mitt Romney began the downhill slide that would cost him the election. Taxes again were a focal point in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Rather than find out how many people like Mitt Romney and President Donald Trump pay less in taxes legally, the poor and middle class get angry. While President Trump promises to reduce taxes for the poor and middle class, the reality is the rich will always pay less in taxes. The reason the rich pay less in taxes goes back to the Rich Dad lesson number 1. The rich do not work for money. As long as a person works for money, they will pay taxes. Even when presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was promising to raise taxes on the rich, she was promising to raise taxes on those with high incomes, people like doctors, lawyers, actors, and not the real rich. Although Rich Dad Poor Dad was not an immediate success, The Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album, Rich Dad Poor Dad, did make the New York Times bestseller by the year 2000 and stayed on that list for nearly 7 years. Also, in the year 2000, Oprah Winfrey called. I was on Oprah. Oh, for the entire hour. And, as they say, the rest is history. Rich Dad Poor Dad has become the #1 personal finance book in history, with the sales of the Rich Dad series of books estimated to be 40 million copies worldwide. Was there really a rich dad? Millions have asked, was there really a rich dad? And to answer the question, you can listen to the rich dad's son, Mike, when he was a guest on the Rich Dad radio show. You can listen to that program by going to richdadradio.com. Rich Dad Graduate School. Rich Dad Poor Dad was written as simple as possible so everyone could understand my Rich Dad's lessons. For those who want to learn more, as a part of the 20-year celebration, I wrote Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. What is financial education really? Why the Rich Are Getting Richer goes into greater, more specific detail on what the Rich Dad taught his son and me when it came to money and investing. Why the Rich Dad Are Getting Richer is Rich Dad Poor Dad for graduate students. It's graduate school for Rich Dad students. Warning and an invitation. While I did my best to keep Why the Rich Are Getting Richer as simple as possible, what the rich really do is not easy or easy to explain. What the rich really do requires real financial education. Financial education is not taught in our schools. I suggest reading Rich Dad Poor Dad first. Then you want to learn more. Why the Rich Are Getting Richer may be for you. Thank you for 20 great years to all of our readers, past, present, and future. All of us at the Rich Dad Company says thank you for the great 20 years. Our mission is to elevate the financial well-being of humanity, and the start is with one life and one person at a time. Introduction. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one rich man and one of a poor man. I had two fathers, a rich one and a poor one. One was highly educated and intelligent. He had a PhD and completed 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2 years. Then he went on to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwest University to do his advanced studies on all full financial scholarship. The other father never finished the 8th grade. Both men were successful in their careers, working hard all their lives. Both earned substantial incomes. Yet one always struggled financially. The other would become one of the richest men in Hawaii. One died leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, charities, and his church. The other left bills to be paid when he died. Both men were strong, charismatic, and influential. Both men offered me advice, but they did not advise the same things. Both men believed strongly in education, but did not recommend the same course of study. If I only had one dad, I would have had to accept or reject his advice. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. Instead of simply accepting and rejecting one or the other, I found myself thinking more, comparing than choosing for myself. The problem was that the rich man was not yet rich, and the poor man was not yet poor. But both were starting out in their careers, and both were struggling with money and families. But they had very different points of view about money. For example, one dad would say, the love of money is the root of all evil. And the other said, the lack of money is the root of all evil. As a young boy, having two strong fathers both influencing me was difficult. I wanted to be a good son and listen, but the two fathers did not say the same thing. The contrast in their point of view, particularly about money, was so extreme that I grew conscious and intrigued. I began to start thinking for long periods of time of what each was saying. Much of my private time was spent reflecting, asking myself questions such as, why does he say that? and then asking the same question of the other dad's statement. It would have been much easier to simply say, "Yeah, he's right. I agree with that." Or to simply reject the point of view by saying, "The old man doesn't know what he's talking about." Instead of having two dads whom I love force me to think and ultimately choose a way of thinking for myself. As a process, choosing for myself turned out to be much more valuable in the long run than simply accepting or rejecting a single point of view. One of the reasons the rich get richer and the poor get poorer is the middle class struggles in debt that the subject of money is taught at home and not in school. Most of us learn from money from our parents. So what poor parents tell their child about money? They simply say, "Stay in school and study hard." The child may graduate with excellent grades, but with a poor person's financial programming and mindset. Sadly, money is not taught in schools. Schools focus on scholastic and professional skills, but not on financial skills. This explains why smart bankers, doctors, and accountants who earn exceptionally excellent grades may struggle financially in all of their lives. Our staggering national debt is due in large to partly a highly educated politicians and government officials making financial decisions with little to no training in the subject of money. Today, I often wonder what will happen when we have millions of people who financially and medically and need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the government for financial support. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? How will a nation survive if teaching about money continues to be left to parents who most of will be or already are poor? Because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, I gained valuable insight into the power of effect of one's thought on one's life. For example, one dad had a bit of a saying, "I can't afford it," and the other dad forbids those words to be used. Instead, he asks, "How can I afford it?" One is a statement and the other is a question. One lets you off the hook and the other forces you to think. My soon-to-be rich dad would explain that by automatically saying the words "I can't afford it," your brain stops working. By asking the question, "How can I afford it?" your brain is put to work. He did not mean that you should buy everything you want. He was fanatical about exercising your mind in the most powerful computer in the world. He'd say, "My brain gets stronger every day because I exercise it. The stronger it gets, the more money I can make." He believed that automatically saying "I can't afford it" was a sign of mental laziness. Although both dads worked hard, I noticed that a dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it came to finances, and the other had a habit of exercising his brain. The long-term result is the dad grew stronger financially, and the other grew weaker. It's not only different from a person who goes to the gym to exercise on a regular basis versus someone who sits on the couch watching television. Proper physical exercise increases your chance of health. The proper mental exercise increases your chances of wealth. Two dads had opposing attitudes that affected the way they thought. One dad thought the rich could pay more taxes to take care of those less fortunate. The other says, "Tax punishes those who produce and reward those who don't produce." One dad recommended, "Study hard so you can find a good company to work for." The other recommended, "Study hard so you can find a good company to buy." One dad said, "The reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids." The other said, "The reason I must be rich is because I have you kids." One encouraged talking about money and business at the dinner table, while the other forbade the subject of money to be discussed over a meal. One said, "When it comes to money, play it safe. Don't take risks." The other said, "Learn to manage risk." One believed, "Our home is the largest investment and our greatest asset." The other believed, "My house is a liability, and if your house is the largest investment, you're in trouble." Both dads paid their bills on time, yet the other one paid bills first while the other paid his bills last. One dad believed in a company or the government for taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned about pay raises, retirement plans, medical funds, sick leave, vacation days, and other perks. He was impressed with two of his uncles who joined the military and earned retirement and an entitled package after 20 years of active service. He would have loved the idea of medical benefits and PX privileges that the military provided its retirees. He also loved the tenure system available through the university. The idea of a job protection and for life and job benefits made it more important and at the time than the job. He would say, "I've worked hard for the government and I'm entitled to these benefits." The other believed of total financial self-resilience. He spoke out against the entitlement mentality and how it created weak and financially needed people. He was empathetic about being financially competent. One dad struggled to save a few dollars. The other created investments. One dad taught me how to write an impressive resume so I can find a good job. The other one taught me how to write a strong business and financial plan so I could create jobs. Being a product of two strong dads allowed me the luxury of observing the effects different thoughts have in one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their lives through their thoughts. For example, my poor dad always said, "I'll never be rich," and that prophecy became reality. My rich dad, on the other hand, always referred to himself as rich. We would say things like, "I'm a rich man," and the rich people don't do this. Even when he was flat broke in a major financial setback, he continued to refer himself as a rich man. He would never cover himself by saying, "There's a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary, poor is eternal." My poor dad would say, "I'm not interested in money," or "money doesn't matter." My rich dad always said, "Money is power." The power of our thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it becomes obvious to me as a young boy that the importance of aware of my thoughts and how I express myself. I noticed that my poor dad was poor, not because of the amount of money he earned, which was significant, but because of his thoughts and his actions. As a young boy having two fathers, I became acutely aware of being careful about which thoughts I choose to adopt as my own. I should listen to my rich dad over my poor dad? Although men had tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed about what thoughts was important to learn. One wanted me to study hard, earn a degree, and get a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study and become a professional, an attorney or an accountant, and go on to business school for my MBA. The other encouraged me to study to be rich, to understand how money works, and to learn to have it work for me. "I don't work for money," were the words he would repeat over and over. "Money works for me." At the age of 9, I decided to listen and learn from my rich dads about money. In doing so, I choose not to listen to my poor dad, even though he was the one with all the college degrees. A lesson from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my favorite poet. Although I love many of his poems, my favorite is The Road Not Taken. I use it in lessons almost daily. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow road. And sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler I stood long, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took others just as fair, and having perhaps a better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for the passing there, had one worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in the leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept from the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling you this with a sigh, Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And that has made all the difference. Over the years, I have reflected upon Robert Frost's poem. Choosing not to listen to my highly educated dad's advice and the attitude about money was a painful decision. But it was a decision that shaped the rest of my life. Once I made up my mind about whom to listen to, my education about money began. My rich dad taught me over a period of 30 years until I was 39 years old. He stopped once he realized that I knew and fully understood what he's been trying to drum into my often thick skull. Money is one form of power. But what is powerful is financial education. Money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how money works, you gain the power over it and can begin building wealth. The reason positive thinking alone does not work because most people went to school and never learned how money works, so they spend their lives working for money. Because I was only 9 years old when I started, the lessons that my rich dad taught me were simple. And when it was all said and done, there was only 6 lessons repeated over 30 years. The book is about those lessons, but as simply as possible, so just as simply as my rich dad put forth those lessons to me. The lessons are not meant to be answers, but guideposts that will assist you and your children and your families to grow wealthier no matter what happens in the world, increasing change and uncertainty. Chapter 1. Lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Dad, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because today's Jimmy mom drove up in their new Cadillac and they were going to their beach house for the weekend. He took 3 of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we were poor kids. They did? My dad asked incredulously. Yeah, they did, I replied in a hurt tone. My dad silently shook his head, pushed up his glasses to the bridge of his nose, and went back to reading the paper. I stood, waiting for the answer. The year was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. They were primarily a sugar plantation town in Hawaii. The managers of the plantation and the other affluent people, such as doctors, business owners, and bankers, sent their children to this public elementary school. After grade 6, their children were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went to the school. I have lived on the other side of the street. I would have gone to a different school with kids from families more like mine. But after grade 6, these kids and I would go on to the public intermediate and high school. There was no private school for them or me. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, if you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, he said, smiling. Even then, I knew what he really meant. That's all I'm going to tell you. Or, I don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me. A partnership is formed. The next day, I told my best friend Mike what my dad had said. As best as I could tell, Mike and I were the only poor kids in the school. Mike was also in the school by a twist of fate. Someone had drawn a jog in for the line for the school district, and we wound up in the school with the rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were because all the other boys had new basketball gloves, new bicycles, new everything. Mom and Dad provided us with just the basics, like food, shelter, and clothes. But that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted things, but there was not much work available for 9-year-old boys. So what do we do to make money? Mike asked. I don't know, I said. But do you want to be my partner? He agreed, And so that Saturday morning, Mike became my first business partner. We spent all morning coming up with the ideas how to make money. Occasionally, we talked about the cool guys at Jimmy's beach house having fun. It hurt a little, but it was a good hurt, because it inspired us to keep thinking of ways to make money. Finally, that afternoon, a bolt of lightning struck. It was an idea Mike got from a science book he had read. Excitedly, we shook hands, and the partnership was now a business. For the next several weeks, Mike and I ran around in our neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking our neighbors if they would save their toothpaste tubes for us. With puzzled looks, most adults consented with a smile. Some asked us what we were doing, which we replied, "We can't tell you. It's our business." We were distressed as the weeks wore on. We had selected a site next to a washing machine as we placed a stockpile of our raw materials. It was in a brown cardboard box that at one time held catsup bottles, and our little pile of toothpaste tubes began to grow. Finally, my mom put her foot down. The sight of her neighbor's messy, crumpled up used toothpaste tubes had gotten to her. "What are you boys doing?" she asked. "And I don't want to hear again that it's your business secret. Do something with this mess or I'm going to throw it out." Mike and I pleaded and begged, explaining that we would soon enough and then we would begin production. We informed her that we were waiting on a couple of neighbors to finish their toothpaste so we could have their tubes. Mom granted us a 1-week extension. The date of production was moved up, and the pressure was on. My first partnership was already being threatened with eviction notice by my own mom. It was because Mike's job to tell the neighbors to quickly use up their toothpaste, saying their dentist wanted them to brush more often anyways. I began to put together the production line. One day, my dad drove up with a friend to see 2 9-year-old boys in the driveway with the production line operating at full speed. There was fine white powder everywhere, along a table with small milk cartons from school, and our family hibachi grill was glowing with red-hot coals and medium heat. Dad walked up cautiously, having the car parked at the base of the driveway since the production line blocked the carport. He and his friend got closer as they saw a steel pot sitting up on the top of the coals in which the toothpaste tubes were being melted down. In those days, toothpaste did not come in plastic tubes. The tubes were made of lead. So once the paint was burned off, the tubes were dropped into the small steel pot. They melted until they became liquid, and with my mom's pot holders, we poured the lead into small holes at the top of the milk carton. The milk carton was filled with plaster of Paris, white powder that was everywhere. In my haste, I had knocked the bag over, and the entire area looked like it had been hit by a snowstorm. The milk cartons were out of the containers for plaster of Paris molds. My dad and his friends watched as we carefully poured the molten lead through the small hole in the top of the cast plaster of Paris cube. "Careful," my dad said. I nodded without looking up. Finally, once the pouring was through, I put the steel pot down and smiled at my dad. "What are you boys doing?" he asked with a cautious smile. "We're doing what you told me to do. We're going to be rich," I said. "Yup," said Mike, grinning and nodding his head. "We're partners." "And what is in those plastic molds?" my dad asked. "Watch," I said. "This is going to be a good batch." With a small hammer, I tapped the seal that divided the tube in half. Cautiously, I pulled out the top half of the plastic mold, and a lead nickel fell out. "Oh no," my dad exclaimed. "You're casting nickels out of lead." "That's right," said Mike. "We're doing as you told us to do. We're making money." My dad's friend turned and burst into laughter. My dad smiled and shook his head. Along with a fire and a box of spent toothpaste tubes, in front of him were 2 little boys covered with white dust, smiling from ear to ear. He asked us to put everything down and to sit with him on the front steps of our house. With a smile, he gently explained what the word counterfeiting meant. Our dreams were dashed. "You mean this is illegal?" asked Mike in a quivering voice. "Let them go," my dad's friend said. "They might be developing a natural talent." My dad glared at him. "Yes, it is illegal," my dad said gently, but you boys should have shown great creativity and original thought. Keep going. I'm really proud of you. Disappointed, Mike and I sat in silence for about 20 minutes before we began cleaning up our mess. The business was over on the opening day, sweeping up powder and I looked at Mike and said, I guess Jimmy and his friends were right. We're poor. My father was just leaving as I said that. Boys, he said, you're only poor if you give up. The most important thing is that you did something. Most people walk and dream of getting rich. You've done something. I'm very proud of you two, and I'll say it again. Keep going. Don't quit. Mike and I stood there in silence. They were nice words, but we didn't know what to do. So how come you're not rich, Dad? I asked. Because I choose to be a school teacher. School teachers don't really think about being rich. We just like to teach. I wish I could help you, but I really don't know how to make money. Mike and I turned and continued our cleanup. I know, my dad said. If you guys want to learn how to be rich, don't ask me. Talk to your dad, Mike. My dad? Asked Mike with a scrunched up face. Yeah, your dad, repeated my dad with a smile. Your dad and I have the same banker, and he raves about your father. He told me several times that your father is brilliant when it comes to money making. My dad? Mike asked again in disbelief. Then how come we don't have a nice car and a nice house like the rich kids at school? A nice car and a nice house don't necessarily mean you're rich or you know how to make money, my dad replied. Jimmy's dad works for the sugar plantation. He's not much different than me. He works for a company and I work for the government. The company buys a car for him. The sugar company is in financial trouble, and Jimmy's dad may soon have nothing. Your dad is different, Mike. He seems to be building an empire, and I suspect in a few years he will be a very rich man. With that, Mike and I got excited again. With a new vigor, we began to clean up the mess we caused by our now defunct first business. But as we were cleaning, we made plans for how much and when to talk to Mike's dad. The problem is that Mike's dad worked long hours and often did not come home until late. His father owned warehouses, a construction company, and a chain of stores, and 3 restaurants. It was restaurants that kept him out late. Mike caught the bus home after we finished cleaning up. He was going to talk to his dad when he got home that night and ask if he could teach us how to become rich. Mike promised to call as soon as we talked to his dad, even if it was late. The phone rang at 8:30 p.m. Okay, I said, next Saturday. I put the phone down. Mike's dad had agreed to meet with us. On Saturday, I caught the 7:30 a.m. bus to the poor side of town. The lessons begin. Mike and I met his dad at the morning at 8 o'clock. He was already busy, having been at work for more than an hour. His construction supervisor was leaving in his pickup truck as I walked up to the simple, small, and tidy home. Mike met me at the door. Dad's on the phone. He said to wait on the back porch, Mike said as he opened the door. The old wooden floor creaked. I stepped across the threshold of the aging house. There was a cheap mat just inside of the door. The mat was there to hide years of wear from countless footsteps that the floor had been supported. Although clean, it needed to be replaced. I felt claustrophobic as I entered the narrow living room that was filled with old, musty, overstuffed furniture that today would be collector's items. Sitting on the couch, there were 2 women, both a little older than my mom. Across from the women sat a man in his work clothes. He wore khaki slacks, a khaki shirt, neatly pressed but without starch, and polished work boots. He was about 10 years older than my dad. They smiled as Mike and I walked past them towards the back porch, and I smiled back shyly. Who are those people? I asked. Oh, they work for my dad. The older man runs his warehouse, and the women are managers of the restaurants. As you arrived, you saw the construction supervisor who is working on a road project about 50 miles from here. His other supervisor is building a tract of houses left before you got here. Does this go on all the time? I asked. Not always, but quite often, said Mike, smiling as he pulled a chair to sit next to me. I asked my dad if he could teach us to make money, Mike said. Oh, and what did he say? I asked with curiosity. Well, he had a funny look on his face at first. Then he said he would make us an offer. Oh, I said, rocking back in my chair against the wall. I sat there perched on two rear legs of the chair. Mike did the same thing. Do you know what he'll offer us? I asked. No, but we'll find out soon. Suddenly, Mike's dad burst into the rickety screen door and onto the porch. Mike and I jumped onto our feet, not out of respect, because we were startled. Ready, boys? He asked as he pulled up a chair to sit down next to us. We nodded. Our heads were pulled from our chairs away from the wall to sit in front of him. He was a big man, about 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. My dad was taller, but about the same weight, and 5 years older than Mike's dad. They sort of look alike, though not the same ethnic makeup. Their energy was similar. Mike says you want to learn how to make money. Is that correct, Robert? I nodded my head quickly with a little trepidation. He said a lot of power behind his words and smiled. Okay, here's my offer. I'll teach you, but I won't do it classroom style. You work for me, I'll teach you. You don't work for me, I won't teach you. I can teach you faster if you work, and I'm wasting my time if you want to sit and listen like you do in school. That's my offer. Take it or leave it. May I ask a question first, I asked? No, take it or leave it. I've got too much work to do to waste my time. If you can't make up your mind decisively, then you'll never learn to make money anyways. Opportunities come and go. Being able to know when to make decisions is an important skill. You have to make quick decisions is an important skill. You have the opportunity that you asked for. School is beginning or it's over in 10 seconds, Mike's dad said with a teasing smile. I'll take it. I said, take it, said Mike. Good, said Mike's dad. Mrs. Martin, Miss Martin will be by in 10 minutes. After I'm through with her, you'll ride with her to my super tet and you can begin working. I'll pay you 10 cents an hour and you work 3 hours every Saturday. But I have a softball game today, I said. Mike's dad lowers his voice in a stern tone. Take it or leave it. I'll take it, I replied, choosing to work and learn instead of play. 30 cents later. By 9 a.m. that day, Mike and I were working for Mrs. Martin. She was a kind and patient woman. She always said that Mike and I reminded her of her 2 grown sons. Although kind, she believed hard work and kept us moving. We spent 3 hours taking canned goods off the shelves, brushing each can with a feather duster to get the dust off, then restacking them neatly. It was excruciatingly boring work. Mike's dad, whom I call Rich Dad, owned 9 little supermarkets, in each with a large parking lot. They were early versions of the 7-Eleven convenience stores, little neighborhood grocery stores where people bought such items as milk, bread, butter, and cigarettes. The problem was that this was Hawaii before air conditioning and was widely used, and the stores would not close their doors because of the heat. On 2 sides of the stores, the door had been wide open to the parking lot and road. Every time a car drove by or pulled into the parking lot, dust would just swirl and settle in the store. We knew a job as long as there was no air conditioning. For 3 weeks, Mike and I reported to Mrs. Martin and worked our 3 hours. By noon, our work was over. She dropped the 3 little dimes in each of our hand, and now at even exchange of 9 in the mid-1950s, 30 cents was usually spent on my money on comic books and went home. By Wednesday, the 4th week, I was ready to quit. I had agreed to work only because I wanted to learn to make money from Mike's dad. Now I was a slave for 10 cents an hour, and on top of that, I hadn't seen Mike's dad since the first Saturday. I'm quitting, I told Mike at lunchtime. School was boring, and now I didn't even have my Saturdays to look forward to. But it was 30 cents that had really gotten me. This time Mike smiled. What are you laughing at? I asked with anger and frustration. Dad said this would happen. He says to meet with him when you're ready to quit. What? I said indignantly. He's been waiting for me to get fed up? Sort of, Mike said. My dad's kind of different. He doesn't teach you like your dad. Your mom and dad lecture a lot. My dad is quiet and a man of few words. You'll just wait until Saturday. I'll tell him you're ready. No. You mean I've been set up? No, not really, but maybe. My dad will explain on Saturday. Waiting in line on Saturday. I was ready to face Mike's dad. Even my real dad was angry with him. My real dad, the one I called the poor one, thought my rich dad was violating child labor laws and should be investigated. My educated poor dad told me to demand what I deserve, at least 25 cents an hour. My poor dad told me if I don't get a raise, I was to quit immediately. You don't need that damn job anyways, said my poor dad with indignation. At 8 o'clock Saturday morning, I walked through the door of Mike's house when Mike's dad opened it. Take a seat and wait in line, he said as I entered. He turned and disappeared into a little office next to a bedroom. I looked around the room, didn't see Mike anywhere. Feeling awkward, I cautiously sat down next to two women who were there for 4 weeks later. They smiled and slid down the couch to make room for me. 45 minutes went by, and I was steaming. The two women had met him and left 30 minutes earlier. And an older gentleman was there for 20 minutes and was also gone. The house was empty, and here I sat in a musty, dark living room on a beautiful, sunny Hawaiian day, waiting to talk to a cheapskate who exploited children. I could hear him rustling around the office, talking on the phone, and ignoring me. I was ready to walk out, but for some reason I stayed. Finally, around 15 minutes later, at exactly 9 o'clock, Rich Dad walked out of his office and said nothing, signaled with his hand for me to enter. I understand you want a raise, or you're going to quit, my rich dad said as he swiveled in his office chair. Well, you're not keeping your end of the bargain, I blurted out, nearly in tears. It was really frightening for me to confront a grown-up. You said you would teach me if I worked for you. Well, I've worked for you, and I've worked hard. I've given up my baseball games to work for you, but you haven't kept your word, and you haven't taught me anything. You're a crook like everyone in town thinks you are. You're greedy. You want all the money, and you don't take care of your employees. You made me wait, and you don't show me any respect. I'm a little boy, but I deserve to be treated better. Rich Dad rocked back in his swivel chair, his hands up to the chin, and he stared at me. Not bad, he said. In less than a month, you sound like most of my employees. What? I asked. Not understanding what he was saying, I continued with my grievance. I thought you were going to keep your end of the bargain and teach me. Instead, you want to torture me? That's cruel. That's really cruel. I am teaching you, Rich Dad said quietly. You have taught me nothing, I said angrily. You haven't even talked to me once since I agreed to work for peanuts. 10 cents an hour? Ha! I should notify the government about you. We have child labor laws, you know. My dad works for the government, you know. Wow, said Rich Dad. Now you sound just like most of the people who used to work for me. People I've either fired or have quit. So what do you have to say? I demanded, feeling pretty brave for a little kid. You lied to me. I've worked for you, and you haven't kept your word. You haven't taught me anything. How do you know that I haven't taught you anything? Asked my rich dad calmly. Well, you never talked to me. I've worked for 3 weeks, and you have not taught me anything, I said with a pout. Does teaching mean talking or a lecture? Rich Dad asked. Well, yeah, I replied. But that's how they teach you in school, he said, smiling. But that's not how life teaches you. I would say that life is the best teacher of all. Most of the time, life does not talk to you. It sort of punches you around. Each push of life is saying, wake up. There's something that I want you to learn. What is this man talking about? I asked myself. Life was pushing me around, was talking to me. Now I knew I had to quit this job. I was talking to someone who needed to be locked up. If you learn life's lessons, you will do well. If not, life will just continue to push you around. People do 2 things. Some let life push them around, others get angry and push back. But they push back against their bosses or their jobs, or the husband or their wife. They do not know it's life that's pushing. I had no idea what he was talking about. Life pushes all of us around. Some people give up and the others fight. A few learn the lesson and move on. And they welcome life pushing them around. To these few people, it means they need and want to learn something. They learn and move on. Most quit, and a few like you fight. Rich Dad stood and shut the creaky old wooden window that needed repair. If you learn this lesson, you will grow into a wise, wealthy, and happy young man. If you don't, you'll spend your life blaming a job, low pay, or your boss for your problems. And you'll live always hoping that a big break that will solve your money problems. Rich Dad looked over at me as if I was still listening. His eyes met mine. We stared at each other, communicating through our eyes. Finally, I looked away once, had I absorbed his message. I knew he was right. I was blaming him, and I did ask to learn. I was fighting. Rich Dad continued. Or you're the kind of person who has no guts, and you just give up every time life pushes you. If you're that kind of person, you'll live all your life playing it safe, doing all the right things, saving yourself up for the event that never happens. You die a boring old man. You'll have lots of friends who really like you because you are such a nice, hardworking guy. But the truth is that you let life push you into submission. Deep down, you were terrified of taking risks. You really wanted to win. But the fear of losing was greater than the excitement of winning. Deep inside, you and only you will know you didn't go for it. You chose to play it safe. Our eyes met again. You've been pushing me around, I asked. Some people might say that, smiled Rich Dad. I would say I gave you a taste of life. What taste of life? I asked, still angry but now curious and ready to learn. You boys are the first people who have ever asked me to teach them how to make money. I have more than 150 employees, and not one of them has asked me what I know about money. They ask me for a job and a paycheck, but never to teach them about money. So most will spend the best years of their lives working for money and not understanding that what they're working for. I sat there listening intently. So, when Mike told me you wanted to learn how to make money, I decided to design a course that mirrored real life. I could talk until I was blue in the face, but you wouldn't hear a thing. So I decided to let life push you around a bit so you could hear me. That's why I only paid you 10 cents. So, what is the lesson I learned from working for only 10 cents an hour? I asked. That you're cheap and you exploit your workers? Rich Dad rolled back and laughed heartedly. Finally, he said, you'd best change your point of view, stop blaming me, and thinking I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, then you have to change me. If you realize you're the problem, then you can change yourself, learn something, and grow wiser. Most people want everyone else in the world to change but themselves. Let me tell you, it's easier to change yourself than anyone else. I don't understand. Don't blame me for your problems, Rich Dad said, growing impatient. But you only pay me 10 cents. So what are you learning? Rich Dad asked, smiling. That you're cheap? I said with a sly grin. See, you think I'm the problem, said Rich Dad. But you are. Well, keep that attitude and you'll learn nothing. Keep that attitude and I'm the problem, and what choices do you have? Well, if you don't pay me more, or show me more respect and teach me, I'll quit. Well put, Rich Dad said. That's exactly what most people do. They quit and go looking for another job, a better opportunity, higher pay, actually thinking that this will solve their problem. In most cases, it doesn't. So what should I do? I asked. Just take this measly 10 cents an hour and smile? Rich Dad smiled. That's what other people do, but that's what they all do. Waiting for a raise, thinking that more money will solve their problems, just to accept it and take a second job while working harder, but again accepting a small paycheck. I sat staring at the floor, beginning to understand the lesson Rich Dad was presenting. I could sense it was a taste of life. Finally, I looked up and asked, "So what will solve the problem?" "This," he said, leaning forward in his chair, tapping me gently on the head. "The stuff between your ears." It was that moment that Rich Dad shared a pivotal point of view that separated him from his employees and my poor dad, and led him to eventually become one of the richest men in Hawaii, while my highly educated poor dad struggled financially all his life. It was a singular point of view that made the difference over a lifetime. Rich Dad explained this point of view over and over, which I called lesson number 1. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. On the bright side, Saturday morning, I learned a completely different point of view from what I have been taught from my poor dad. At the age of 9, I understood that both dads wanted me to learn. Both dads encouraged me to study, but not the same things. My highly educated dad recommended I do what he did. "Son, I want you to study hard, get good grades, so you can find a safe, secure job with a big company, and make sure it has excellent benefits." My rich dad wanted me to learn how money works so I can make it work for me. The lessons I would learn through life with his guidance, not because of a classroom. My rich dad continued to the first lesson. "I'm glad you got angry for working for 10 cents an hour. If you hadn't gotten angry had simply accepted it, I would tell you guys I could not teach you. You see, true learning takes energy, passion, and a burning desire. Anger is a big part of that formula, for passion is anger and love combined. When it comes to money, most people want to play it safe and feel secure, so passion does not direct them. Fear does." "So why is that they'll take jobs with low pay?" I asked. "Yes," says Rich Dad. "Some people say I exploit people because I don't pay as much as the sugar plantation or the government. I say people exploit themselves. That's their fear, not mine." "But don't you feel like you should pay them more?" I asked. "I don't have to. And besides, more money will not solve their problems. Just look at your dad. He makes a lot of money and he still can't pay his bills. Most people give him more money only get into more debt." "So that's why 10 cents an hour," I said, smiling. "That's a part of the whole lesson?" "That's right," smiled Rich Dad. "You see, your dad went to school and got an excellent education so he could get a high-paying job, but he still has money problems, but he never learned anything about money in school. On top of that, he believes in working for money." "And you don't?" I asked. "Not really," said my rich dad. "If you want to learn to work for money, then stay in school. That's a great place to learn to do that. But if you want to learn to have money work for you, then I'll teach you that. But only if you want to learn." "Wouldn't everyone want to learn that?" I asked. "No," said Rich Dad, "simply because it's easier to learn to work for money, especially if your fear is primary emotion when the subject of money is discussed." "I don't understand," I said with a frown. "I don't just worry about that for now. Just now, it's the fear that keeps most people working at a job, the fear of not paying their bills, fear of being fired, the fear is not having enough money, and the fear of starting over. That's the price of studying to learn a profession or trade, then working for money. Most people become a slave to the money, then get angry at their boss." "Learn to have money work for you is a completely different course of study?" I asked. "Absolutely," Rich Dad answered. "Absolutely." We sat in the silence on the beautiful Hawaiian Saturday morning. My friend had just started their Little League baseball game, but for some reason I was now thankful I decided to work for 10 cents an hour. I sensed that I was about to learn something my friends wouldn't learn in school. "Ready to learn?" asked Rich Dad. "Absolutely," I said with a grin. "I have kept my promise. I've been teaching you from afar," my rich dad said. "At 9 years old, you've gotten a taste what it feels like to work for money. Just multiply your last month by 50 years, and you have an idea of what most people spend their life doing." "I don't understand," I said. "How do you feel waiting in line just to see me, to get hired, and once again ask for money?" "Terrible. If you choose to work for money, that is what life will be like. And how you feel when Mrs. Martin dropped 3 dimes in your hand for 3 hours of work. It felt like it wasn't enough. It seemed like nothing, and I was disappointed. And that is how most employees feel when they look at their paychecks, especially after all the taxes and deductions are taken out. At least you got 100%. You mean most workers don't get paid everything? I asked in amazement. Heavens no, said Rich Dad. The government always takes the share first. How do they do that? I asked. Taxes, said Rich Dad. You're taxed when you earn. You're taxed when you spend. You're taxed when you save, and you're taxed when you die. Why do people let the government do that to them? The rich don't, said Rich Dad with a smile. The poor man in the middle class do. I bet you I earn more than your dad, and he pays more in taxes. How can that be? I asked. At my age, that made no sense to me. Why would someone let the government do that to them? Rich Dad rocked slowly and silently in his chair, then looked at me. Ready to learn? He asked. I nodded my head slowly. As I said, there's a lot to learn. Learning how to have money work for you is a lifetime of study. Most people go to college for 4 years. Their education ends. I already know that my study of money will continue over my lifetime simply because the more I find out I need to know. Most people never study the subject. They go to work, get their paycheck, balance their checkbooks, and that's it. Then they wonder why they have money problems. They think that more money will solve the problems and don't realize it's their lack of financial education that's the problem. So my dad has tax problems because he doesn't understand money? I asked, confused. Look, said Rich Dad, taxes are just one small portion on learning how to save money, learning how to have money work for you. Today I wanted to find out if you still have the passion to learn about money. Most people don't. They want to go to school, learn a profession, and have fun at their work and learn lots of money. One day, they wake up with big money problems, then they can't stop working. That's the price of only knowing how to work for money instead of studying how to have money work for you. So you do still have the passion to learn? Asked Rich Dad. I nodded my head. Good, said Rich Dad. Now get back to work. This time I'll pay you nothing. What? I asked in amazement. You heard me. Nothing. You will work the same 3 hours every Saturday, but the time you will not be paid 10 cents an hour. You said you wanted to learn to not work for money, so I'm not going to pay you anything. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I've already had this conversation with Mike, and he's already working, dusting and stacking canned goods for free. You better hurry and get back there. That's not fair, I shouted. You've got to pay me something. You said you wanted to learn. If you don't learn this now, you'll grow up to be like the 2 women and 2 older men sitting up in my living room, working for money and hoping I don't fire them. Or like your dad, earning lots of money only to be in debt up to his eyeballs, hoping more money will solve the problem. If that's what you want, I'll go back to our original deal of 10 cents an hour. Or you can do what most adults do, complain that there's not enough pay, quit, and go looking for another job. But what else do? I asked. Rich Dad tapped me on the head. Use this. If you use it well, you soon will thank me for giving you an opportunity, and you'll grow into a rich man. I stood there, not believing what a raw deal I was handed. I came to ask for a raise, and somehow I was instead working for nothing. Rich Dad tapped me on the head again and said, Use this. Now get out of here and get back to work. Lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. I didn't tell my poor dad I wasn't being paid. He wouldn't have understood, and I didn't want to try to explain something I didn't understand myself. For 3 more weeks, Mike and I worked 3 hours every Saturday for nothing. The work didn't bother me, and the routine got easier. But it was missed baseball games and not being able to afford to buy new comic books that got me. Rich Dad stopped by at the afternoon on the 3rd week. We heard his truck pull up in the parking lot and sputter when the engine was turned off. He had entered the store and greeted Mrs. Martin with a hug. After finding out things were going in the store, he reached into the ice cream freezer, pulled out 2 bars, paid for them, and signaled Mike and me. Let's go for a walk, boys. We crossed the street, dodging a few cars, and walked across the grassy field where a few adults were playing softball. Sitting down at a lone picnic table, he handed Mike and me the treats. "How's it going, boys?" "Okay," said Mike. I nodded in agreement. "Learn anything yet?" Rich Dad asked. Mike and I looked at each other, shrugged our shoulders, then shook our head in unison. Avoiding one of life's biggest traps. "Well, you boys had better start thinking. You're starting at one of life's biggest lessons. If you learn it, you enjoy a life of great freedom and insecurity. If you don't, you will wind up like Mrs. Martin and most of the people playing softball at this park. They work very hard for little money, clinging to the illusion of a job security that looking forward to a 3-day vacation each year and being maybe a skimpy pension after 45 years of service. If that's what excites you, I'll give you your raise to 25 cents an hour." "But these are good, hard-working people. Are you making fun of them?" I demanded. A smile came over Rich Dad's face. "Mrs. Martin is a mother to me. I would never be that cruel. I may sound unkind because I'm doing my best to point out something to the both of you. I want to expand your point of view so you could see something most people have never had the benefit of seeing because their vision is too narrow. Most people never see the trap they're in." Mike and I sat there uncertain of this message. He sounded cruel, and yet we could sense he was trying to drive home a point. With a smile, Rich Dad said, "Doesn't that 25 cents an hour sound good? Doesn't it make your heart beat a little faster?" I shook my head no, but it really did. 25 cents an hour would be big bucks to me. "Okay, I'll pay you $1 an hour," Rich Dad said with a slight grin. Now my heart started to race. My brain was screaming, "Take it, take it!" I could not believe what I was hearing. Still, I say nothing. "Okay, $2 an hour." My little brain and heart nearly exploded. After all, it was 1956, and being paid $2 an hour would have made me the richest kid in the world. I couldn't imagine earning that kind of money. I wanted to say yes. I wanted the deal. But I could picture a new bicycle, a new baseball glove, and all the adoration of my friends when I flashed some cash. On top of that, Jimmy and his rich friends could never call me poor again. But somehow, my mouth stayed shut. That ice cream had melted and was running down my hand. The rich red was looking at two boys staring back at him, wide eyes and brains empty. He was testing us, and he knew there was part of our emotions that wanted to take the deal. He understood that every person has a weak and needy part of their soul that can be brought, and he knew that every individual also had a part of their soul that was resilient and could never be bought. It was only a question of which one was stronger. "Okay, $5 an hour." Suddenly, I was silent. Something has changed. The offer was too big and ridiculous. Not many grown-ups in the 1956 made more than that. But quickly my temptation disappeared and calmly set in. Slowly, I turned my left to look at Mike. He looked back at me. Part of my soul that was weak and needy was silent. The part of me that had no price took over. I knew Mike had gotten to that point too. "Good," Rich Dad said softly. "Most people have a price. They have a price because of human emotions named fear and greed. First, the fear of being without money motivates us to work hard. And then once we get that paycheck, desire starts us thinking about all the wonderful things that money can buy. Then the pattern is set." "What pattern?" I asked. "The pattern of get up, go to work, pay bills, get up, go to work, pay bills. People's lives are forever controlled by two emotions, fear and greed. Offer them more money, and they continue to recycle by increasing their spending. This is what I call the rat race." "Is there any other way?" Mike asked. "Yes," the rich dad said slowly, "but only a few people find it." "In what way is that?" Mike asked. "That's what I hope you boys will learn as you work and study with me. That's why I took away all forms of pay." "Any hints?" Mike asked. We're kind of tired of working hard, especially for nothing." "Well, the first step is telling the truth," said Rich Dad. "We haven't been lying," I said. "I didn't say you were lying. I said to tell the truth," Rich Dad retorted. "Tell the truth about what?" How you're feeling, Rich Dad said. You don't have to say it to anyone else. Just admit it to yourself. You mean the people in this park the people who work for you, Mrs. Martin, they don't do that? I doubt it, said Rich Dad. Instead, they feel fear of not having money. They don't confront it logically. They react emotionally. Instead of using their heads, Rich Dad says. Then they get a few bucks in their hands, and again the emotion of desire and greed take over, and then again they react instead of think. So their emotions control their brain, Mike said. That is correct, said Rich Dad. Instead of admitting the truth about how they feel, they react to their feelings and fail to think. They feel the fear, so they go to work, hoping that money will soothe their fear, but it doesn't. It continues to haunt them, and they return to work, hoping again that the money will calm their fears, and again it doesn't. Fear keeps them in this trap, working, earning money, hoping the fear will go away. But every day they get up, the old fears wake up with them. For millions of people, that old fear keeps them awake at night, causing a night of turmoil and worry. So they get up, go to work, hoping that a paycheck will kill that fear gnawing at their souls. Money is running their lives, and they refuse to tell the truth about that. Money is in control of their emotions and souls. Rich Dad sat quietly, letting his words sink in. Mike and I had heard what he said, but didn't fully understand what he was talking about. I just knew that I often wondered why grown-ups hurried off to work. It didn't seem like much fun. They never looked happy, but something kept them going. Realizing we had absorbed as much as possible of what he was thinking about, Rich Dad said, I want you boys to avoid that trap. This was really what I want to teach you, not just to be rich, because being rich does not solve any problems. It doesn't? I asked, surprised. No, it doesn't. Let me explain the other emotion. Desire. Some call it greed, but I prefer desire. It's perfectly normal to desire something better, prettier, more fun, or exciting. So people also work for money because of desire. They desire money for the joy they think they can buy. But the joy that money brings is often short-lived, and they soon need more money for more joy, more pleasure, more comfort, and more security. So they keep working, thinking money will soothe their souls that are troubled by fear and desire. But money can't do that. Even rich people do this, Mike asked. Rich people included, said Mike's dad. In fact, the reason many rich people aren't rich is because of desire, but because of fear. They believe that money can eliminate the fear of being poor, so they amass tons of it, only to find the fear gets worse. Now they fear losing money. I have friends who keep working even though they have plenty. I know people who have millions who are more afraid now than they were poor. They were terrified of losing it all. The fears that drove them to get rich got worse. The weak and needy part of their soul is actually screaming louder. They don't want those big houses, the cars, the high life money has bought them. They worry about their friends would say if they lost all their money. Many are emotionally desperate and neurotic, although they look rich and have more money. So is a poor man happier, I asked. No, I don't think so, the rich dad replied. The avoidance of money is just as psychotic as being attached to it. As if on cue, a town derelict went past our table, stopping by a large rubbish can and rummaging around in it. The three of us watched him with great interest. Then before we probably would have just ignored him. Rich Dad pulled out $1 from his wallet and gestured to the old man. Seeing the money, the derelict came over immediately, took the bill, thanked the rich dad profusely, and hurried off, ecstatic with his good fortune. He's not much different from most of my employees, Rich Dad said. I've met so many people who say, oh, I'm not interested in money, yet they'll work at a job for 8 hours a day. That's a denial of truth. If they weren't interested in money, then why are they working? What kind of people think it's probably more psychotic than a person who hoards money? As I sat there listening to my rich dad, my mind flashed to the countless times my own dad said, I'm not interested in money. He said those words often. He also covered himself by always saying, I work because I love my job. So, what do we do, I asked. Not work for money until all traces of fear and greed are gone? No, that'd be a waste of time, said Rich Dad. Emotions are what make us human. The word emotion stands for energy in motion. Be truthful about your emotions and use your mind and emotions in your favor, not against yourself. Whoa, said Mike. Don't worry about what I just said. It will make more sense in years to come. Just be an observer, not a reactor, to your emotions. Most people do not know that it's their emotions that are doing the thinking. Your emotions are your emotions, and you have to learn to do your own thinking. Can you give me an example, I asked. Sure, Rich Dad replied. When the person says, I need to find a job, it's most likely an emotion doing the thinking. Fear of not having money generates that thought. But people do need money if they have bills to pay, I said. Sure they do, smiled Rich Dad. All I'm saying is that fear is all too often doing the thinking. I don't understand, said Mike. For example, said Rich Dad, if the fear of not having enough money arises, instead of immediately running out to get a job, they instead might ask themselves this question: will a job be the best solution for this fear in the long run? In my opinion, the answer is no. A job is really a short-term solution to a long-term problem. But my dad is always saying, stay in school, get good grades, so you can find a job safe, secure, I interjected, somewhat confused. Yes, I understand that he says that, Rich Dad said, smiling. Most people recommend that, and it's a good path for most people, but people that make recommendations primarily out of fear. You mean my dad says that because he's afraid? Yeah, he said. He's terrified that you won't earn enough money and won't fit into society. Don't get me wrong, he loves you and wants the best for you. I too believe in education and jobs are important, but it won't handle the fear. You see, the same fear that makes him get up in the morning to earn a few bucks is the fear that is causing him to be frantic about you going to school. So what do you recommend, I asked. I want to teach you to be a master the power of money. Instead of being afraid of it, they don't teach you that in school, and if you don't learn it, you become a slave to money. It was finally making sense. He wanted us to widen our views to see that Mrs. Martin of this world couldn't see. He uses examples that sounded cruel at the time, but I've never forgotten them. My vision widened that day, and I began to see the trap that lay ahead for most people. You see, we're all employees ultimately. We just work at different levels, said Rich Dad. I just want you boys to have a chance to avoid the trap because those two emotions, fear and desire, used to help them in your favor, not against you. That's what I want to teach you. I'm not interested in just teaching you to make a pile of money. That won't handle the fear or desire. If you don't handle the fear or desire and you get rich, you'll only be a highly paid slave. So how do we avoid the trap, I asked. The main cause of poverty or financial struggle is the fear and ignorance, not the economy or the government or the rich. It's self-inflicted fear and ignorance that keep people trapped. So you boys go to school and get your college degrees, and I'll teach you how to stay out of the trap. The pieces of the puzzle were appearing. My highly educated dad had a great education and a great career, but never told him how to handle money or his fear of it. Because it came clear, I could learn a different and more important things from two fathers. So, you've been talking about the fear of not having money. How does the desire for money affect our thinking, Mike asked. How do you feel when I get tempted to pay you that raise? Did you notice your desire rising? We nodded our heads. By not giving into your emotions, you are able to delay your reactions and think. That's important. We will always have emotion of fear and greed. From here on in, it's imperative for you to use those emotions to your advantage. For a long term, do not let your emotions control your thinking. Most people use fear and greed to think against themselves. It's the start of ignorance. Most people live their lives chasing paychecks, pay raises, and job security because of the emotions of desire and fear, not really questioning where these emotions have driven thoughts were leaving them. Just like the picture of a donkey dragging a cart with its owner dangling a carrot in front of its nose, the donkey owner may be going where he wants to, but It's the donkey chasing the illusion. Tomorrow there will only be another carrot for the donkey. You mean the moment I picture a new baseball glove, candy, and toys, that's like a carrot to a donkey? Mike asked. Yes, as you get older, your toys get more expensive. A new car, a new boat, big house to impress your friends, the rich dad said with a smile. Fear pushes you out the door, and desire calls to you. That's the trap. So what's the answer? Mike asked. What intensifies fear and desire is ignorance. That is why rich people with lots of money often have more fears the richer they get. Money is the carrot, the illusion. If the donkey could see the whole picture, it might rethink its choice to chase the carrot. Rich Dad went on to explain the human life of struggles between ignorance and illumination. He explained that once a person stops searching for information and self-knowledge, ignorance sets in. That struggle is a moment-to-moment decision to learn to open or close one's mind. Look, school is very important, so go to school to learn a skill or profession to become contributing members of society. Every culture needs teachers, doctors, mechanics, artists, cooks, business people, police officers, firefighters, soldiers. Schools train them so society can thrive and flourish. Unfortunately, for many people, school is the end, not the beginning. There was a long silence. Rich Dad was smiling. I didn't comprehend everything he said that day, but it was the most great teachers. His word continues to teach for years. I've been a little cruel today, said Rich Dad, but I want you to always remember this talk. I want you to think of Mrs. Martin, and I want you to always remember that donkey. Never forget that fear and desire will lead you to the biggest life trap when you're not aware of them controlling your thinking. To spend your life living in fear, never exploring your dreams is cruel. To work hard for money, thinking that it will buy you things that will never make you happy is so cruel. To wake up in the middle of the night, terrified about paying bills is a horrible way to live. To live life dictated by the size of a paycheck is not really living life. Thinking a job makes you secure is lying to yourself. That is cruel, and that's the trap I want you to avoid. I've seen how money runs people's lives. Don't let this happen to you. Please don't let money run your lives. The softball rolled under a table. Rich Dad picked it up and threw it back. So what does ignorance have to do with greed and fear? I asked. Because it is ignorance about money, it causes so much greed and fear, said Rich Dad. Let me give you some examples. A doctor wanting more money to better provide for his family raises his fees. By raising his fees, it makes the healthcare more expensive for everyone. It hurts the poor people the most, so they have the worst health than those with money. Because the doctors raise their fees, the attorneys raise their fees. Because the attorneys' fees have gone up, school teachers want to raise, which raises our taxes, and so on and so forth. There are such horrifying gaps between the rich and the poor that chaos will break out and other civilizations will collapse. History proves that great civilizations collapse when the gap between the haves and have-not is too great. Sadly, America is on the same course because we haven't learned from history. We only memorize historical dates and names, not the lessons. Aren't prices supposed to go up? I asked. In an educated society with well-run government, prices should actually come down. Of course, that's often only true in theory. Prices go up because of greed and fear caused by ignorance. If schools taught people about money, there would be more money and lower prices. But school only focused on teaching people to work for money, not how to harness money's power. But don't we have business schools? Mike asked. And haven't you encouraged me to go for my MBA? Yes, said Rich Dad, but all too often business school train employees to become sophisticated bean counters. Heaven forbid a bean counter takes over a business. All they do is look at the numbers, fire people, kill the business. I know this because I hired bean counters. All they think about is cutting costs and raising prices, which causes problems. Bean counting is important. I wish more people knew it, but it, too, is not the whole picture, Rich Dad added angrily. So there is an answer, Mike asked. Yes, said Rich Dad. Learn to use your emotions to think, not to think with your emotions. When you boys mastered your emotions by agreeing to work for free, I knew there was hope. When you again resisted your emotions when I tempted you with more money, you are again learning to think in spite of being emotionally charged up. That's the first step. Why is that step so important? I asked. Well, that's up to you to find out. If you want to learn, I'll take you boys to the Briar Patch, a place almost everyone else avoids. If you go with me, you'll let go of the idea of working for money. Instead, you'll learn to have money work for you. And what will we get if we go with you? If we agree to learn from you, what will we get? The same thing as Brer Rabbit got, said Rich Dad, referring to the class's children's story. Is there a briar patch? I asked. Yes, said Rich Dad. The briar patch is our fear and greed. Confronting fears and weaknesses and neediness by choosing our own thoughts is the way out. Choosing our thoughts? Mike asked, puzzled. Yes, choosing what we think rather than reacting to our emotions. Instead of getting up and going to work because having the money to pay your bills is scaring you, ask yourself, is working harder at the best solution I can have to this problem? Most people are too afraid to rationally think this through instead of run out the door job they hate. The tar baby is in control. That's what I mean by choosing your thoughts. How do we do that? Mike asked. That's what I'll teach you. I will teach you to have a choice of thoughts rather than a knee-jerk reaction like gulping down your morning coffee and running out the door. Remember, what I said before, a job is only a short-term solution to a long-term problem. Most people have only one problem in mind, and it's short-term. It's the bills at the end of the month, the tar baby. Money controls their lives, or should I say the fear and ignorance about money controls it. So they do as their parents did. They get up every day and go to work for money, not taking the time to ask the question, is there another way? Their emotion now controls their thinking, not their heads. Now, can you tell the difference between emotions thinking and the head that's thinking? Mike asked. Oh, yes. I can hear it all the time, said Rich Dad. I hear things like, well, everyone has to work, or the rich are crooks, or I'll get another job. I deserve this raise. You can't push me around. Or I like this job because it's secure. No one asks, is there something I'm missing here? Which would break from the emotional thought and give you time to think clearly. As we headed back to the store, Rich Dad explained that the rich really did make money. They did not work for it. He went on to explain when Mike and I were casting 5 cents out of lead, thinking that we're making money, we're very close to thinking the way the rich think. The problem was that creating money is legal for the government and banks to do, but illegal for us to do. There are legal ways to create money from nothing, he told us. Rich Dad went on to explain that that money is an illusion, truly like the carrot for the donkey. It's only out of fear and greed that the illusion of money is held together by billions of people who believe that money is real. It's not. Money is really made up. It's only because of the illusion of the confidence of the ignorance of the masses that this house of cards stands. He talked about the gold standard that America was on, that each dollar bill was actually a silver certificate. That what concerned him was the rumor that we someday go off the gold standard and use dollars and no longer be backed by something tangible. If that happens, boy, all hell will break loose. The poor, the middle class, and the ignorant will have their lives ruined because they will continue to believe that money is real and that the company they work for, the government, will look after them. We really did not understand what he was saying that day, but over the years it made more and more sense. Seeing what others missed. As he climbed into the pickup truck outside of his convenience store, Rich Dad said, "Keep working, boys, but the sooner you forget about needing a paycheck, the easier adult life will be. Keep using your brain, work for free, and soon your mind will show you ways of making money far beyond what I could ever pay you. You will see things that other people never see. Most people will never see the opportunities because they're looking for money and security, so that's all they get. The moment you see the opportunity, you see them for the rest of your life. The moment you do that, I'll teach you something else. Learn this and you'll avoid one of life's biggest traps." Mike and I picked up our things from the convenience store and waved goodbye to Mrs. Martin. We went back to the park to the same picnic bench and spent several more hours thinking and talking. We spent the next week at school thinking and talking too. For 2 more weeks, we kept thinking, talking, and working for free. At the end of the second Saturday, I was again saying goodbye to Mrs. Martin and looking at the comic book stand with a long gaze. The hard thing about not even getting 30 cents every Sunday was that I didn't even have any money to buy comic books. Suddenly, as Mrs. Martin said goodbye to Mike and me, I saw her do something I'd never done before. Mrs. Martin was cutting the front page of the comic book in half. She kept the top half of the comic book cover and threw the rest of the book into a large cardboard box. When I asked her what she did with the comic books, she said, "I'd thrown them away. I give the top half of the cover back to the comic book distributor for credit when he brings in new comics. He's coming in an hour." Mike and I waited for that hour. Soon the distributor arrived and I asked him if we could have the comic books. To my delight, he said yes. "You can have them if you work for the store and do not resell them." Remember the old business partnership? Well, Mike and I revived it. Using our spare room in Mike's basement, we began piling hundreds of comic books in that room. Soon, our comic book library was open to the public. We hired Mike's younger sister, who loved to study, to be head librarian. She charged each child 10 cents to admission to the library. Was open from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. every day after school. The customers, the children of the neighborhood, could read as many comics as they wanted in 2 hours. It was a bargain for them since a comic cost 10 cents each. They could read 5 or 6 in 2 hours. Mike's little sister could check the kids as they left to make sure they weren't borrowing any comics. She also left the books logging how many kids showed up each day, who they were, and how many comments they might have. Mike and I averaged $9.50 per week over a 3-month period. We paid his little sister $1 a week and allowed her to read the comics for free, which she rarely did since she was always studying. Mike and I kept our agreement by working in the store every Saturday, collecting the comic books from the different stores. We kept our agreement to the distributor by not selling any comic books. We burned them once they got too tattered. Then we opened up a branch office, but we never could find someone trustworthy like and dedicated as Mike's sister. At an early age, we found out how hard it was to find good staff. 3 months after the library first opened, a fight broke out in the room. Some bullies from another neighborhood pushed their way in, and Mike's dad suggested we shut down the business. So our comic book business shut down, and we stopped working on the Saturdays at the convenience store. But Rich Dad was excited because he had new things he wanted to teach us. He was happy because we learned our first lesson so well. We learned to make money work for us. By not getting paid for our work at the store, we were forced to use our imaginations to identify an opportunity to make money. By starting our own business, the comic book library, we're in control of our own finances, not dependent on an employer. The best part was that our business generated money for us. Even when we weren't physically there, our money worked for us. Instead of us paying us money, Rich Dad has given us so much more. Study Session Chapter 1. Lesson 1. The Rich Don't Work for Money. Chapter Summary. When he was 9 years old, Robert Kiyosaki and his childhood friend were invited to a classmate's beach house because they were poor kids in an affluent school. After being told by his poor dad, his father who was a teacher and making a good living but always struggled to make ends meet, to simply go and make money, he and his friend Mike did just that. They collected empty toothpaste tubes, which at the time were made of lead. They melted them down and used plaster molds to make counterfeit nickels. They were soon set straight by Robert's dad, who told them they should talk to Mike's dad, who never finished 8th grade but ran multiple successful businesses. Mike's dad, the rich dad of the book title, agreed to teach them on his terms. He had them work for 3 hours every Sunday morning at one of his convenience stores, dusting the food packaging and cleaning. He paid them 10 cents an hour, which Robert usually spent 10 cents on comic books. Fairly quickly, Robert grew disenchanted with the boring work and low pay. When he told his friends he was going to quit, Mike told him that his dad said that would happen and that Robert needed to meet him. Robert's dad is a school teacher and uses lectures, but Mike's dad was a man of few words and taught in very different ways, which Robert was able to find out. The next Saturday morning, Robert went to Mike's dad but was waiting in a dusty, dark living room for an hour. He was fed up and emotional by the time he got to complain to Mike's dad, accusing him of being greedy and not showing him respect. When he said Mike's dad hadn't taught him anything despite their agreement, the business owner calmly disagreed. His rich dad explained that the life doesn't teach you with words, but by pushing you around. Some people let life push them around, others get angry and push gas against their boss or loved ones. But some people learn a lesson from it, and in fact welcoming the life pushing them around because it means they needed to learn something. Those who didn't learn the lesson spent their lives blaming everyone else and waiting for a big break, or deciding to play it safe or never risk or win big. He told Robert that he and Mike were the first people who ever asked him to teach him how to make money. He had more than 150 employees and thought they had asked for a job, but they never asked for a knowledge that Robert and Mike wanted. So the rich dad decided to create a course that mirrored life and pushed the boys around a little. Robert asked what lesson he learned. After that, his rich dad was cheap and exploited his workers. The rich dad challenged him on this, saying most people blamed others when in fact their attitude was the problem. What could solve this problem? His brain, Mike's dad told him. He wanted Robert to learn how money works so he could make him work for it. He was so glad that Robert was angry because anger comes from combined with love and create passion, a key component of learning. Money wouldn't solve people's problems, he went on. Many people have a high-paying job and still struggle with money problems. Like Robert's poor dad, because they didn't know how to make money work for them. He said that the emotions that Robert had felt working for those 10 cents an hour, disappointed and feeling like it wasn't enough, was that he'd feel like his whole life if he didn't learn this lesson now. He introduced Robert to the concept of taxes, explaining that the poor and middle class allow the government to take from them. The rich do not. He asked Robert if he still had a passion to learn. When he said yes, the rich dad told him he was going to stop paying for the work at the store. Then he told Robert to use his head to figure it out. Robert and Mike worked for free for 3 weeks. Mike's dad showed up and took them outside for a walk, asking if they learned anything yet. They hadn't. The rich dad told them if they didn't learn this lesson, they'd be like most people who work hard for little money their whole lives. He offered them 25 cents, which they resisted, upped it to $1, then $2. But Robert stayed silent. The final offer of $5 an hour, a pricey sum at the time, solidified for Robert that he wouldn't be bought. The rich dad said it was good that they didn't have a price. Most people did because their lives are controlled by fear and greed. The fear of being without makes them work hard and earn a paycheck. But they have that money. Greed gets them thinking about the things they could buy, which makes them need more money, which makes them need more. But it's what the rich dad called rat race. He told the boys that the first step to admitting to themselves is that what they were feeling. Too often, people reacted to their emotions instead of thinking logically. They're afraid to admit money is running their lives, and so money controls them. Not just the poor who face that fear, the rich often operate from a place of fear. He wanted to teach the boys not just to be rich because money doesn't solve the problems. School is important, he told them, but for most people in the end, it's not the beginning. And the key for the boys was to learn the emotion to think, not to think with their emotions. They must learn to choose their thoughts. He told them to keep an eye out for ways to make money, saying the moment you see an opportunity, you'll see them for the rest of your life. The boys did, and as soon as he saw an opportunity creating a library where kids could pay admission and read as many comics books as they would in 2 hours, unsold comic books that otherwise would have been thrown away from the convenience store.
They made great profit, and the business did well for about 3 months until the fight in the library shut down. But they learned from the first lesson that making money worked for them, even when they weren't physically present. They were ready to learn more, and Mike's dad was ready to teach them. Left hemisphere moment. Despite having a high-paying job, people like Robert's poor dad struggled to make ends meet. Right hemisphere moment. Looking at the discarded comic books in a new creative way led to a business opportunity. Subconscious moment. People let their emotions of fear and greed rule their lives. What Robert is saying. Now is the time to reflect and ask yourself, what is Robert saying in this quote, and why does he say that? In this section, you do not need to agree or disagree with Robert. The goal is to understand what Robert is saying. Remember, this curriculum is designed to be cooperative and supportive. 2 minds are better than 1. If you do not understand what Robert is saying, do not shy away from it. Ask for help understanding it. Take time to discuss each quote until you understand it. The poor and middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Life pushes all of us around. Some people give up and others fight. A few learn the lesson and move on. They welcome life pushing them around. Stop blaming me and thinking I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, then you have to change me. If you realize you're the problem, then you can change yourself. Learn something and grow wiser. When it comes to money, most people want to play it safe and secure. So passion does not direct them. Fear does. Most people given more money only get into more debt. It's the fear that keeps most people working at the job. The fear of not paying their bills, the fear of being fired, the fear of not having enough money, and the fear of starting over. That's the price of studying to learn a profession or trade than working for money. Most people become a slave to money, and they get angry at their boss. Most people do not know what it's their emotions that are doing the thinking. A job is a really short-term solution to a long-term problem. It's just like the picture of a donkey dragging a cart with its owner dangling the carrot in front of his nose. The donkey's owner may be going where he wants to, but the donkey is just chasing an illusion. Tomorrow there will only be another carrot for that donkey. Additional questions. Now it's time to take the stories in this chapter along with the understanding of what Robert's saying and apply them to you and your life. Ask yourself the questions below and discuss them with your study partner. Be honest with yourself and your partner. If you do not like some of the answers you're giving, ask yourself if you're willing to change and accept the challenge to change your thoughts and mindset. 1. How common is the approach to make money taken by Robert's poor dad? 2. Robert's rich dad said true learning takes energy, passion, and a burning desire. What are examples of when this has proven true in your life? What is one lesson you've never forgotten? Why? Would the pay rate of 10 cents an hour and then nothing an hour would have stirred you the same reaction as Robert? Is it the fear that drives most people to work? Are there other factors at play? Is the temptation strong to think what more money will soothe that fear? Why is that such a common reaction? 6. What example from your life when you reacted with your emotions? What time when you were able to observe your emotions instead and choose your thoughts? 7. Are the rich or the poor more susceptible to the controlling of emotion of fear and greed? Why do you think this? 8. Do you think most people realize that they're stuck in the rat race? Why or why not?
Hello everyone. So I will be turning on the video now if you will like to tune in via video. So those were all of the questions from the first lesson. I'm going to go through every question here and kind of answer it for myself personally. I'm going to start with the first question. How common is the approach to money taken by Robert's poor dad? So in this chapter, he talks about his biological father, his poor dad, as working for money. He's an educator And is he's just basically how I'm about to answer the question. I do feel like a lot of people take this route. We all I am myself finding myself there, that I am working for money. And the reason why I picked up this book is because I want that financial freedom. I want to be able to get there. So I do believe that right now that is something that we're all, a majority of us are in currently. Number 2. Robert's rich dad said true learning takes energy and passion and a burning desire. What are the examples of when this has proven true in your life, and one lesson you never forgot and why? So, I'm currently in it. I was feeling existential crisis of this isn't life, and I don't want to be working for money every day, I don't get me wrong, I really do like where I work, but just living not paycheck to paycheck, because I have a good amount of savings, but wanting more and wanting to do more in life has really resonated with me, and wanting to just kind of get out of this, what he calls rat race. A lesson that I'm not going to forget, or that I've learned, is just that you're the only one who can do this. Only you can take action. No one can live your life for you. And this is me kind of taking a hold of that. 3, would the pay rate of 10 cents an hour, then nothing for an hour, have stirred you the same reaction as Robert? So I'm going to give you a little backstory or I'm going to review what happened in chapter 1, lesson 1. He and his friend were on the lower socioeconomic scale of where he lived. He lived in an area where he could just barely pass to go to the more rich school, or the school that has more funding. And he and his friend were in lower socioeconomic areas, or his family was did not have that much money, and he decided that he wanted to make money. So he and his friend came up with this idea to melt the toothpaste cans, what they used to be in cans for him, and they melted them down and tried to make nickels. And when he went to go to Mike's dad, the rich dad, he was being paid by this rich dad for 10 cents an hour and then nothing, because the dad wanted to instill in him and Mike that sometimes you're not going to get anything for the work that you do. And so you need to learn to have that tenacity and the resilience that sometimes you might not get anything. And in the past, I would have exactly reacted like he did. Like, how the hell are you not going to pay me for the work that I'm doing? But in the long run, especially going through my life and then reading this book, it really does take a lot. And being rich, like the rich people out there have, again, the tenacity and the resilience that, they're just not going to give up. And that's what most successful people are, is that they failed a bunch of times. So they're basically failures, which is equal to success. So something that I've learned reading this entire book, and while just reflecting on the things I have read and listened to, is that failure is key. We should no longer be afraid of failure, and that we should hope to fail fast, fail hard, and be able to pick ourselves back up and pivot. As Oprah says, I got this from Evan Carmichael's compilation of Oprah videos, and she says to make the next right move. And once you figure out those next right moves, you just have to keep making them. And now I'm starting to see that, and that I need to put in the work to be able to just build on my own self-confidence, self-resilience, and in general, just myself. 3, is the fear that drives most people to work. Is it fear that drives most people to work? Are there other factors at play? So I'm privileged enough to have a little bit of financial freedom. I am in the middle class and I'm learned a lot from this book, but I do people fear, yes, fear drives people to go to work because they fear not having money, they fear not, losing it all and not being able to afford the luxuries that they have. Because don't get me wrong, that having a home is nice, it's wonderful, and we all want one. Well, some people want to travel, but like everybody has their thing that they want, but right now money is the fuel to get there. So I do believe fear is a general motivator for the general population of people. For some people it could be the that they really do love their job. Right now a lot of us don't, sadly, and that's why there's books like this, so we can escape what he calls the rat race. Are there other factors at play? Yes. So the factor of fear in conjunction or like combined with family, home, and things like that. There's anxiety, social standard. We're raised to get a job and to be a cog in this machine. And, a lot, like there was like a poll, like I believe it was a Gallup's, don't quote me on that, but I think it was a Gallup's, where a lot of people just think their job is bullshit. Like, and you know what? Sometimes that's kind of true. So I do believe that fear does drive people, because even though they think their job is bullshit, they still go because they need the money to live. And then now I'm going to move on to question 5. Is the temptation strong to think that more money will soothe that fear? Why is that such a common reaction? So a lot of people do say like, oh, if I had more money, this, and this. And is the temptation strong to think that money? Yes, the temptation is strong to think that, but like he goes on to explain, so I am jumping ahead and a little bit of a spoiler, is that it is, people also don't know how to manage money. So they think they need more, but then if they have more, they tend to spend more and then still lose it faster. So it is a common reaction because we aren't taught how to be financially literate and how to actually handle ourselves and say, I forgot who said this. I think it was Jay Shetty, where he says, say no to good so you can say yes to great. I think it was him. I'm not sure. Please correct me in the comments. 6. What is an example of your life when you reacted to your emotions? What's a time when you were able to observe your emotions and choose your thoughts? So up until maybe very recently, and I'm like, it is like very recent, like maybe like last week. Okay, maybe not last week, but I am on this path of trying to be more aware and be more mindful and try to understand others so I can be able to learn and be able to respond and elevate my way of thinking using other people's point of views. So I have been really reactive. I have been, not so great with being able to do that, but it's something I'm doing now, and I hope that I am doing well in continuing to structure my speech in the sense of understanding what somebody else is saying and if I'm perceiving it correctly. So a time that I was able to do that, I'm trying to do that right now. So I'm a work in progress. 7. Are the rich or the poor more susceptible to those controlling emotions of fear and greed? Why do you think that is? So I believe he does talk about it in this chapter. Yes, he does. That both rich and the poor can be susceptible to that emotion of fear or greed. So greed, obviously, most for the rich or even for the poor. Like both fear and greed can go for the rich and the poor, because on the poor side, the fear is not having enough and providing for your family, or being greedy because you don't have enough and then so you have to take more. Like if you were to get some free stuff, you try to take a lot of it and try to resell it or whatever. And then again, on the rich end, it's probably the same thing, like with real estate or like things on just a more high end scale. And I think it's because the fear of loss, or the fear of judgment if you lose it all, and the social structure that has been set up by government and by our predecessors, that we're not able to really detach from that right now. And this is something I am working on my journey to not be so attached to when it comes to money, but to be able to be grateful for this vehicle to get me where I need to be, to because I do follow, or I do agree with his wants of creating more financial literacy for other people. I want educational entertainment. So this is something I generally enjoy. And if you enjoy podcasts and things like that, I really appreciate you being a part of this and listening and tuning into me. Please, 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 I do encourage you to write in the comments, because I do want to hear from you. I want to understand if you align with these questions and the way I'm answering them, or do you have a completely different point of view? So please let me hear from you. The last question is 8. Do you think most people realize they're stuck in the rat race? Why or why not? This question for me is kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, some people think that the government is here to help them, or like we're supposed to be doing this stuff. But I would like to explain that from my Google searches, the industrial age started in like the 1770s. So like right before like independence, I believe. Industrial age. So the industrial age was 1760 to 1840s. But let's be real, I don't think the industrial age ever really ended. It just got sped up and is, more efficient, yet more anxiety ridden. And I don't think people think they're stuck in a rat race, because I hear a lot of people say, like, oh, we're supposed to do this, whatever, whatever. But we're not. The world is like 4.5 billion years old, give or take. And the industrial age, if it was in 1760s, that's like what, 250 years to 300 years, something like that. Sorry, my math. So 1760 minus 21. So yeah, like 261 years. So if we put that in like generations, and let's say like starting from like the 50s, if people live up to like 50 years, that's like 6 generations of people, 4 to 6, give or take. But yes, I do believe some people don't realize that this isn't reality that, the stuff that's built around us is now dictating our lives, as if this, like, we're having cars, having all this really cool technology is really new to us, and we're not, as our evolutionary biology, we're kind of not there yet. And well, we are because we're here in this time and we're adapting, but we need more time to, or we weren't taught, we were taught to be like in the industrial age to, be workers and things like that. And we are stuck in a rat race in the sense that people think they have freedom, but they really don't, because they still think they need to ask time to take off of work. And you can get in trouble if you don't show up to work on time. Like, there's an attendance, which is crazy because you're selling your time for, which is sometimes a little bit. And that's what he's saying. The rich don't work for money, they make the money work for them. And some actionable steps that I'm going to take, well, I already have, are like some investments, and I need to learn more about that. So when I learn more about that, I will be the first to share with you, along with the books that I have read. Again, in this, some similar to this kind of format, where what I read and then discuss and then probably show you what I do. But right now I am on the beginning end. This is the first episode, and I will be back with more information once I get more. So those were all the questions for the first chapter. Well, yes, those were all the questions for the first chapter. I have the audio clip here for the like foreword, which is called 20 Years 2020 Hindsight, the introduction, and then chapter 1, lesson 1, the rich don't work for money. Again, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. That is all for this discussion. I would love to hear some of your thoughts. If you followed along the questions at the end of the chapter, could you please put them in the comments? I would love to gain your perspective and hear your responses to how you answered some of these questions, or what you thought of the chapter, or what you thought of my reading. Again, please be gentle, because I know there are some things that I missaid or stuttered on. And if you'd enjoyed this, I would love it if you would share with someone who you think would like it, or just wants to learn a little bit more about money, because that's where I'm at right now. So that's the end for this one. So long for now, my friends, and stay generous.